Hello, thank you for joining us today on Electronics at the Edge and Next Flex podcast. I'm Stan Farnsworth, and joining us today is Dr. Nick Morris.
Hi, Stan. How you doing? Very happy to be here today.
Thanks, Nick. Now, you are the Deputy Director of Technology, and one of the elements that you are most connected in is also one of the elements that I think is most common to folks that are familiar with NextFlex, and that is our project call. And today I thought we could jump in, talk a little bit more about that and why project calls are an important part of our mission at NextFlex. What is a project call?
So, in short, the Project Call program is a funding mechanism for which NextFlex solicits proposals from the community with the goal of advancing manufacturing for hybrid electronics. So, really focusing on building a robust US-based industrial. Let me start over. So, really focused on building a robust US industrial base. So, it's really meant to connect industry, academia, small businesses, large defense primes, non-traditional primes, our DoD partners in the DoD labs and the services to really bring the community together to mature technologies, transition technologies, and deployment for them to the warfighter or release them as commercial products.
And so some of the benefits of that then, well, there's a handful of benefits. One of them is really bringing that ecosystem together and using that as an energizer with very specific examples and needs and requirements to bring in the right kind of ecosystem. Tell us about the kinds of ecosystem partners that typically get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So, part of my role as a deputy director of technology at NextFlex, it's very outward looking to our members of our consortium, really working with our government partners, our members to understand needs, technical needs, manufacturing challenges, understanding requirements for potential products or technologies that are needed. One function of that is through something called our technical working groups, which is a group of subject matter experts across industry, government, academia, that's really their goals to understand the state of the art of all these technologies across the hybrid electronics landscape, understand what requirements are needed for potential use cases and applications, and then understand where the bottlenecks are in the community. Where can we try to tackle some of these cross-cutting challenges and do some information sharing and advance the technologies so that we can get where we're trying to go faster. And it's great to bring the community together in that way. In my experience, I've been in this role. I've been with NextFlex about almost 5 years now. And in that entire time, it's really working with those in our community that have been fantastic collaborators and sharers of information. That's really been the most inspiring part. And that's what I actually, before joining NextFlex, I was at a member company, a defense contractor. So I had exposure to how great this community has been and the collaboration there. And so those technical working groups is really where the seed of an idea starts for a potential project called project. So we get the groups together, the technical working groups, several times a year. We talk about challenges that people are experiencing, and it's a good sharing of information, cross-pollination, all on a pre-competitive level where no one's sharing their really secret sauce. But if someone says like, hey, I'm trying to print this circuit, but I'm having challenges working with, this type of ink and this printer, that really gets the conversation going on the technical level of someone saying like, oh yeah, I experienced that same issue, or, oh, I've solved that. Here's sort of what I've done. And that information sharing can be hugely powerful. It's when we identify those big challenges that the community is really facing where there's no solution, where we put those on our roadmap and we understand like we need to tackle this to advance the technology to provide capabilities to the industrial base. That's really where those opportunities present themselves. And we refine those, talk to additional subject matter experts, those that are looking for solutions in the areas, and those ultimately can turn into a project called Topics that would be in an RFP that we would release. So it's really across the community in terms of, again, academia doing research in key areas, the small businesses and startups who have a great idea and they're trying to scale and they're trying to put solutions together, to those large companies that are the integrators of technologies that are really looking to pool those technologies into their platform or their potential product, all working together to identify the challenges and then potentially put proposals together to solve the challenges within the project called construct.
So the working groups really are a key origination point for how project call requirements are established. And so the working groups the technical working groups, it seems to me, are really foundational to that whole process.
Absolutely. And that's what we really promote, that it's completely member driven. So that the idea is the members, our government partners, each one of the 11 technical working groups that we run are led by a group of co-leads from industry, academia, and government. So we have that balanced perspective of needs and requirements. But the technical direction is really driven by the members to identify those challenges and get a broad perspective of ideas, challenges, bring those together, refine those, understand where those cross-cutting challenges are, and where we could potentially make the biggest impact with putting a topic, a project called topic together. And that's really been, inspirational from my seat of being able to see this collaboration work together, the community coming together to try to solve the biggest challenges that we're experiencing. So we have, I mentioned 11 technical working groups. 5 of them focus on those enabling manufacturing technologies, sort of the how of hybrid electronics. How are we going to do this? How are we going to be able to manufacture it? What material sets do we need, or do we need to improve on? What do the modeling and design tools look like? And then 6 groups are more focused on those application spaces. The what are we trying to enable with hybrid electronics? The integrated antennas, the automotive platforms that are looking to adopt hybrid electronics, the wearables for human performance monitoring, health monitoring, or medical devices. They're really the ones driving the transition of technologies into the field, into product, and they let us know, like, we need these are the requirements we need. And if the state of the art's not hitting that on our roadmap, we need to flag that and make sure that we can understand where we can put investments through our project calls to be able to achieve that, to enable those technologies.
So it's really an opportunity for people that are versed and practicing and active in the space to share notes, to share successes, and for folks that are having troubles to voice those. Is there room in the technical working groups for people who may be new to the technical area and may not feel like they have that expert level experience to contribute? I expect that there's probably is room for new people to come in and use that as a learning platform.
Absolutely, yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there's a spectrum of approaches to the technical working groups. There's people that come, the co-leads drive a lot of the discussion, but there's some very engaged members across all of the groups that show up to every meeting and drive conversation and bring their perspective. But we also welcome anyone in the NextFlex membership to come and attend the meetings if they're just trying to learn more, if they're just interested in seeing like potential application areas or new materials that might come along. They might not be a subject matter expert. They're just here to learn. And we welcome that and encourage that as well. So you come and get as engaged as you want. If you want to be a fly on the wall and just listen into the conversation, that's great. We'd love to hear your input, but we welcome all NextFlex members to the group to be able to engage in those.
And so they can get connections for people who are active in the space, and they can also get coaching from people
But
who are active in the space.
when we're having these deep technical discussions of challenges and solutions, and that's where those connections are built. I think it's in the meetings that we have, but it's a lot of times sort of in the sidebar discussions or the emails afterwards of, say, hey, you brought up this, I'd like to learn more about that, or can you connect me with this person or somebody sitting in this seat? And that's a lot of my role as well, as being a bit of a marriage broker and connecting people, coaching potential members and non-members if they're looking to apply to the proposal to the project calls. I mean, that's the process that we've developed over 10 project calls now has really led to a lot of hands-on direct mentoring, coaching of those that are potentially looking to submit a proposal. That starts very early on, from once the topics are released in RFP, they're out, we release those publicly. We hold what we call a proposers day, as well as a teaming event where we'll present the topics, present why they're why they're in the RFP, because they're identified as a specific area of need, how that came from the roadmap process, and then share that information. Have what we call the teaming event, where we allow potential proposers to come and raise their hand, say, I'm looking to submit a proposal to this topic, and I'm looking for others to join my team, or I don't have a team, but I'm looking to potentially, I have a solution in this area that I'd like to maybe propose. So it's a great team building exercise to put these strong project proposal teams together. Then teams can come to us if they're thinking about proposing and let us know what their idea is. We can provide feedback. Does that align with what the topic is looking to do? You seem like you have a great team, but maybe you should talk to this material supplier and they might be helpful, or this university partner, or this small business or prime, to really try to build the strongest proposals that we can. We always say that when we're having these calls, we say we want to make our jobs as difficult as it is when we go to evaluate these proposals because we have too many strong proposals. So we're very interested in mentoring and coaching those thinking about submitting a proposal to make it as strong as it possibly can be.
Well, you keyed on a really great question, a great point that I'd like to dive into further, the evaluation criteria. And so we know that the technical points come from the road mapping process and from experts in the area identifying these as critical needs that the industry needs to be able to address to move forward. But as you get to the actual proposals, what are some of the elements that the reviewer team looks at to make a selection?
That's a great question as well. And I think it'd be good to first point out that this is also member driven. So the reviewers of the proposals are also the members of NextFlex and our government partners. So it's really continuing that trend of this is a member driven effort from start to finish. In terms of the evaluation criteria themselves, I mean, it aligns closely with other, government agency BAA evaluation criteria, but it's slightly different because it really mirrors what the main goals of NextFlex are. I mean, so that's to advance the manufacturing technologies to be able to enable those full scale production, those products, those transition of technologies to the warfighter, to create the robust industrial base. So that's where we always encourage teaming in the proposals to make sure you have a solid supply chain, you have a good chunk of that industrial base engaged in a potential project, and there's workforce development aspects of the proposals as well. So that's where we really focus on the technical merit of the proposal themselves. They're reviewed by a dozen or so subject matter experts across our membership and our government partners. They focus on manufacturability, and that's sort of the readiness of the technology is very important because the funding that funds the project calls is focused on technology readiness and manufacturing readiness 4 to 7. That's in that valley of death that people talk about in terms of there's not a lot of funding in that area to really mature and advanced manufacturability of a technology once it's been maybe demonstrated in a lab. And another evaluation criteria that's become more and more important over the last couple of cycles is technology transition potential. So what does the commercialization plan look like? What does the transition to, say, a defense program of record look like? Because given the relative maturity of the community, the technologies that we've been road mapping for 10 years now, a lot of those are transitioning into these areas. So demonstrating technologies are ready or nearly ready to transition, we're just at that higher maturity level, is very important. So that's something we really focus on, and making sure that teams understand what it takes, because it's not an easy thing to commercialize, release a product, transition a technology. So we want to make sure teams really focus on that. And then some other things like, how is this going to impact and educate those in the workforce? What's the cost realism look like? And are they going to be able to achieve it in the time that they lay out? But really, it's looking to make sure that we can mature the technology and you have a plan to transition that technology and commercialize it. Maybe not at the end of the project, but longer term, what does that potential look like?
Now, one of the challenges with these new technologies is that the adoption ultimately is impacted by the technology, but the technology is not the only answer. Do you envision uh, a potential next step for project calls where end user customers and the business element are brought into play to ultimately get to an adoption? So as NextFlex is looking forward now to getting more into full transitions, and we're being asked to provide examples of technologies moving out into the field, into deployment. That full path is not limited to just to the technology elements. There's a whole set of business, marketing, sales, commercialization elements as well. An opportunity for that in potential future project call architectures, or do you see that as a different mechanism that might have to be addressed in some other ways?
That's a good question. I think it's a different mechanism, and let me explain why. So the project calls themselves are all pre-competitive, all specifically not product development. I think there's opportunities for once these technologies mature, and then they can be further matured as a product at a company, or as a technology that's for a specific need in the DoD, where we have specific requirements that where that might go under the cloak. The project calls, why they're very unique, I think, is because it's really one of the main benefits is the sharing of information and deep technical information. So because it's all pre-competitive, the performers do this maturation work, this development work, and then they do a quarterly technical report and a quarterly webinar that's shared with the NextFlex membership. And that really shows, their, I'm not going to say secret sauce, but sort of what they've done on the technical level to advance the state, and that's shared. And the idea is, rising tide lifts all ships, where we pick this topic and we pick this proposal, or I should say, the members pick this topic and the members pick this proposal because they saw potential in it solving a challenge that a lot of the community is feeling. So sharing that, having that level of information sharing is very valuable to the NextFlex membership, because not only do they see in real time as they attend these webinars how the technology is maturing, we have a repository of, now we have over 100 projects that we have funded or are funding that have a quarterly technical report and a recorded webinar as a wealth of information to be able to point to if someone's having a challenge in a specific area. It's a wealth of deep technical knowledge that we can share. So, that's why I think the project call mechanism itself is not meant to be product development. I think there's a number of other efforts coming down the line, both in the Department of Defense area, as well as, I don't know about commercially, but I know that's been a main thrust in government agencies of transitioning technologies and supporting that it's a little different color of money than the money that's supporting the project call efforts. So I think you brought out a good point, but that's an opportunity to continue that, but not what the project call mechanism itself is designed to do.
So one benefit of NextFlex membership then is NextFlex members have access to these technical reports. And so if we have 100 or so projects that have been funded or are being funded, and each of them has a quarterly report, is my math right? Is that 400 quarterly reports, plus or minus a few, that members have access to inside our portal?
Yeah, absolutely. It's more than that. I mean, a lot of these projects run for 18 months, 24 months in some cases. So they're delivering significant number of technical reports and recorded webinars, and we have all of those on our member portal available to our tiered members. And we do our best to sort of provide a curated view on, you need to go check out this project. You need to look at PC 8.3, or you need to look at these, and point members in the direction of exactly projects that align with their interests and may have some of the solutions that they're looking for if they happen to miss the webinar live. So it's a wealth of information that's available to NextFlex members.
That really seems incredible that all that information is accessible, from put together by teams that are leaders in the space. And so that really represents a state of the art and an evolution of the state of the art. And I really appreciate your comments, Nick, about the industry sharing, the communication sharing, the information sharing that is an underlying premise of the project call, and why the project call is not the right vehicle to get all the way into product development, product commercialization, product release. And based on that, I would say that NextFlex in our fab and engineering services model would potentially be a follow-on for groups that have these technical elements and have an interest in carrying those forward into very specific products. Once they engage separately with the NextFlex engineering team, then that information becomes proprietary to that engaged customer. And at that point, the engineering team maintains that confidentiality with that customer through their commercialization projects and out into deployment. So that's a really key differentiation. Still Next Flex, but we see two very specific operating modes. One is that project call where the information is public and disseminated by definition through requirements of the government funding that supports that. And then separately, privately, that commercialization element that is definitely not shared publicly and remains confidential to that client.
Yep, absolutely. We know that that's critically important, and thanks for making that differentiation.
What are some examples of project calls that you think that our viewers should know about that have been particularly interesting or relevant or impactful?
That's a great question, and that's something we like to highlight. And as I mentioned, sort of the relative maturity of our community in the industrial base, there's several opportunities we could point to. One actually goes back to Project Call 2 several years ago. It started as a small project. So that was a project led by Universal Instruments and Binghamton University, looking to develop a high-speed wafer feeder. So it's essentially a semiconductor and packaging tool, assembly tool that's for more traditional semiconductor manufacturing, but started as an idea of how do we handle these thin die as we dice them from a wafer. And this is a high-speed wafer feeder that can very accurately pick them and place them onto a device. And it started in Project Call 2. Universal carried it on, continued to mature it, and then a couple of years ago was released as a commercial product. We actually have one of them in our fab facility in San Jose, and they now make it available commercially. But that's really one where, it started as an idea for an instrument, really evolved and is looking at the tackling challenges in high speed handling and packaging and assembly for either hybrid electronics or more traditional electronics. Another one, and these are, again, really application driven, if we're looking to those that sort of have an impact and are transitioning into the field. Another is looking at that we've had funded several projects that have made great advancements in RF communications. So looking at printed high frequency radars for things like UAVs. And one of the big advantages of a lot of hybrid electronics is the reduced size, weight, and power requirements. So we have these much more lightweight, smaller volume platforms for RF communications. There was a project several years ago back in PC5 led by Boeing with partners in Matternet, which is a commercial drone manufacturer, as well as Boise State and UMass Lowell, where they demonstrated these multi-layer RF communication boards that they mounted onto these commercial UAV platforms and flight tested them and demonstrated their capabilities. That's only continued, maybe not that specific project, but several other projects that we funded that are really looking at this hot area of UAVs, UASs, these unmanned aerial systems, especially for DoD, as we look at the state of warfare these days. It's really evolved over the last couple of years. Where we look to conflicts in Ukraine of how they're utilizing these low-cost drone platforms, and that's a huge opportunity for hybrid electronics as we look at the benefits of not only size, weight, and power, but these complex conformal 3D architectures. So that really laid the groundwork a couple of years ago to continue for others to build on, because again, that information, how they printed that, how they developed that, is all available to NextFlex members. So a number of companies have sort of leveraged that and built technologies around that area that continue to be matured and developed. Maybe I'll point to one more is similar in the area of defense, is a project that Lockheed Martin actually led. They've led a handful of projects over the last couple of years in the project calls that have really done a fantastic job of maturing technologies in the area of antennas and taking some more traditional antennas and changing the architecture of them in a way that's only enabled by additive electronics. So that, again, it goes back to greatly reducing the packaging size for antennas to be able to essentially fold these elements in, greatly reduce volume, greatly reduce weight to unburden some of these platforms that they have. So there's great project that they led in that area that's looking to transition, as well as some others in the area of very complex antennas that again can only be manufactured using additive technologies. So those are some that are really resonating with, especially in the areas of defense.
And then from time to time, those programs do take a turn into more of that private commercialization and carry forward. But that's the project call is where the public element of that stops.
Absolutely. So there's some other examples where we've helped and we funded some work in the areas of physiological monitors for wearables for things like occupational safety, where those companies have then gone on to release those as commercial products, and those are out in the field. So that's another great example.
When we talk about project calls, help us understand what kind of dollars are involved in a typical project call.
Sure. So that's over the last couple of years. Again, that's shifted, but generally, the projects are around $500,000 in government funds. Some of them are up to $1 million in government funds that are really focused on more of building a demonstrator of a technology. So that's more hardware involved. It's a little bit higher maturity level, and it really demonstrates a capability. So that's generally for the last couple of project cycles, they've been between 500,000 and $1 million of government funds. I will note that those all require at least a one-to-one cost share from the proposal team. And that's statutory to the funding that we receive. That's a requirement because we really want to have the industrial base be engaged and interested and invested in maturing the technology. So that's essentially brings the project totals up to, $1 million to $2 million of total project investment. But that shows that we have the teams invested in maturing the technology as well. Those are typically for those $500,000 to $1 million in government funding available. The projects typically run between 12 months and 18 months, a period of performance. And when it comes to that cost share, I'll make sure to note that that is per team. That is not necessarily per participant on a team to bring at least one-to-one cost share, which is critical for university partners, startups, and small businesses that might have some challenges getting that cost share together. That it's really the collective team cost share coming together where there's opportunities for those and maybe at one of the primes or larger organizations that can contribute more cost share to be able to make sure that the team hits that at least one-to-one threshold.
So, what's the best way for an organization that thinks they might be interested in participating to get plugged in?
That's a great question. I mean, top line, joining NextFlex is a great opportunity to do that. But that's where you can get involved in the ground zero in the technical working groups to be able to provide your input for the challenges, provide guidance of where you think topics should be, draft potential topics that can be considered by the group. And then we have a technical council and a governing council that looks over the potential topics and down selects and ultimately selects the topics that go into the RFP. That's one opportunity. Look on our website. We also started releasing a couple of years ago a public version of our roadmaps. So each of those 11 technical working groups I mentioned maintains a 5-year roadmap. And that's a 15 to 20 page document per group. So over 200 pages of roadmap that's available to our NextFlex members on our member portal. Now, for years, that was only available to members. A couple of years ago, we started releasing a public version of that roadmap, which takes that 15 or 20 pages of each working group down to a single page. But it really is a snapshot of what the state of the art is in the area of modeling and design, or materials and hybrid electronics, or what the human monitoring systems group is looking, what requirements they have. State of the art key opportunities that the group identifies, and that is available to non-members as well. So that's an opportunity for non-members to go on our website, be able to see NextFlex is interested in this area. It doesn't have a lot of technical information, but maybe I should reach out. Maybe I should look into NextFlex membership to be able to get the deep technical information that's on there. So that's why I always encourage anyone that's interested in NextFlex on the technical side or interested in potentially submitting a project call proposal when those RFPs are released is just to reach out to us. I mean, we're happy to provide guidance and coaching. We're happy to provide additional information and just try to steer you into how to be successful in the project calls, what type of information you need, be that marriage broker of like, oh, you need to go talk to, Mr. X, or you need to go over here and you need to get this manufacturer on your team. That's a lot of what my role is. And that's what I get a lot of satisfaction of seeing these seedlings of an idea come together, provide mentoring, provide coaching to these members or non-members, see these teams form. And then when I get the proposal and it's a super strong proposal, I get a lot of satisfaction in that as well. And we have strong proposals to choose from, which makes my life not easier, but at least maybe more impactful, I think.
It is very satisfying to see different groups coming together to collaborate. And what's been interesting to me to see different kinds of these collaborations over my years in the space is that those company collaborations continue and become durable, and the individual connections and relationships that form also wind up becoming durable over the year, are maintained as people change organizations, as roles and functions change, and that really become those really become sort of career time scale resources that and connections going forward. It's really neat to be able to see those forming in these teaming meetings and through this project call process.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Nick, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your insights. Now, there are some administrative details with these. We are not going to get into those today. There's timing and scheduling and the checklists. It's a pretty well curated process. Contacting Nick, coming to the website, getting in touch with Karen Savala, our director of marketing on the membership and her team. These are great first steps to learning more about project calls and membership.
Absolutely. Greatly appreciate it, Stan. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Well, this has been another episode of Electronics at the Edge. I'm Stan Farnsworth. Nick Morris, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time.